He was just trying to board a plane, nothing more. But when a K9 unexpectedly licked his hand, everything stopped. Within minutes, cameras glitched, identities were swapped, and a buried past began to surface. What started as a denied boarding spiraled into a national investigation involving explosives, a forgotten soldier, and a loyal dog who remembered what the system erased. This is not just a story about security. It's about memory, truth, and redemption. If you're drawn to real, powerful stories that uncover what's hidden, like this video and subscribe. You won't believe how deep this one goes. The terminal buzzed with the usual chaos of a late afternoon at JFK. Children tugged on their parents' arms, business travelers buried themselves in laptops, and airport announcements crackled overhead. Half lost in the ambient noise, Marcus Taylor stood patiently in line at gate 42B, holding his boarding pass in one hand and a slim black carry-on in the other. He wore a navy windbreaker, faded jeans, and the kind of sneakers that bore the mileage of a man who walked more than he spoke. His passport was valid. His name was cleared on every no-fly list. He had checked in early, passed TSA without issue, and now was just one beep away from boarding the plane that would take him to Atlanta, where his sister was about to give birth to her first child. The gate agent scanned the boarding pass of the passenger in front of Marcus, smiled mechanically, and waved them through. Marcus stepped forward with a polite nod, extending his pass toward the scanner. But this time, the scanner didn't chirp. Instead, the screen turned red. The agent frowned, quickly scanning the pass again. Same result. "Just a moment," she said, tapping at her keyboard. Her smile faded. I'm going to need you to step aside for a moment, sir." Marcus's brow furrowed. "Is something wrong?" "I'm not sure," the agent replied, already waving over a uniformed security officer. "But it seems there's a flag on your record. We'll just need to verify a few things." The uniformed man approached with a firm jaw and a soft-spoken but cold tone. "Sir, I'll need you to come with me." There was no raised voice, no scene, but the subtle shift in posture, the way eyes began to follow him, the way nearby passengers quietly stepped away, was unmistakable. Marcus complied without protest. He had done nothing wrong, and in airports, compliance was often the shortest path to clarity. They led him to a waiting area near the glass wall overlooking the runway. Marcus sat, back straight, eyes scanning the space. A second officer stood nearby, arms folded, as the first busied himself on a radio. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Marcus checked his phone. Boarding time had passed. The flight was leaving. "Excuse me," he said, rising halfway. "My flight's at the gate now. Can someone explain?" "Sit down," the second officer cut in, more sharply than necessary. "We're handling it." Marcus sat, jaw clenched. Something was wrong, and not just with the system. Meanwhile, a German shepherd on a short leash trotted across the corridor with purpose. A 9 unit on patrol. The handler, a younger woman in a DHS vest, let the dog lead, her eyes scanning for any sign of disturbance. The dog paused, turned, sniffed the air, then changed course entirely. It walked directly to Marcus. The handler tugged lightly, but the shepherd resisted. It stepped closer, staring at Marcus with calm, assessing eyes. Then, it did something unexpected. It licked his not a bite, not a growl, just one deliberate lick, slow, firm, as if to say, "I know you." The handler reacted quickly. "Max," she scolded, pulling the dog back. "Heel." Marcus raised both hands slightly, unsure whether to laugh or be concerned. The handler gave him an apologetic look. "Sorry, he usually doesn't." Max barked once, softly, then sat, his ears alert. That was when the nearby camera, one mounted just above the waiting area, suddenly blinked. A faint worrying noise. The security officer looked up, frowned, and tapped his radio again. Marcus noticed. Was that camera off before? The officer didn't answer. Moments later, a man in a black blazer approached. He looked older than the others, with gray at his temples and the unmistakable bearing of command. "Mr. Taylor," he said evenly, "I'm Deputy Director Harris, Airport Security Division. There's been Am I under investigation?" "You, sir? Then why was I removed from the gate without explanation? There appears to be a discrepancy in our system. Your name was flagged, but..." Harris hesitated, eyeing Max, who still sat quietly nearby. "That interaction with the dog, has changed some priorities. I'd like to ask you a few questions privately. Marcus nodded slowly. I want to call my sister first. She's expecting me tonight. Harris nodded once. Of course. As Marcus stepped a few feet away to make the call, Harris turned to the handler. What just happened? The woman shook her head. I don't know, sir. Max doesn't do that. Not ever. Harris turned toward the blinking camera above. Pull the footage, all of it. I want to see what was erased and why. Back near the glass wall, Marcus ended his call with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. He pocketed his phone and looked again at the shepherd, who met his gaze with quiet intelligence. Something had begun, and Marcus knew. Max didn't budge, even after the firm command from his handler and the unmistakable authority in her voice. The canine remained planted near Marcus, eyes focused, ears twitching as if tuned to something no one else could hear. The handler, Officer Jensen, gave another tug on the leash. Max, heel, she repeated, voice lower now, the command more of a plea than an order. But the dog's body remained rigid, his tail straight, posture locked, not aggressive, not panicked, just determined. Deputy Director Harris narrowed his eyes. That's not normal, is it? Jensen shook her head, clearly unsettled. Not at all. Max is trained for explosive detection and behavior assessment. When he locks like this, it usually means he senses a concealed threat, or Max's loyalty wasn't just an oddity, it was a signal. But of what? As the scene held its strange tension, another man approached from the other side of the corridor. Plain clothes, badge clipped discreetly to his belt, earpiece in his right ear, his gaze sweeping the area as he neared Harris. Sir, he said quietly, I need you to come see this. Harris excused himself and followed the man through a side hallway that led to the Security Operations Center. Once inside the dim, monitor-lined room, Harris was greeted by the lead systems analyst, a short, wiry man with glasses that perpetually slid down his nose. We were pulling backup footage per your request, he began, tapping rapidly at a keyboard, and we noticed something odd. He brought up a split-screen feed, one from the wide-angle gate camera covering the boarding queue, and one from the overhead thermal scanner. Watch this, the analyst said, rewinding to the moment Marcus had stepped forward to scan his pass. The footage rolled normally, up to the exact second the scanner failed. Then, a stutter, a flicker 2-second gap. Harris leaned in. That's what I thought, the analyst replied. But it's not a glitch, it's a manual overwrite. Look here. He enlarged the log metadata on the side of the screen. Frame ID jump from 764,112 to 7,641,137. That's not a skip, that's a frame injection. Harris's face hardened. Someone edited this, someone tried to erase something, or someone, and they did it in real time. Or who has that kind of access? Level 5 clearance or higher. That's Homeland, FBI, or Internal Systems admin. Exactly. Harris straightened up. Flag every login in that time window. I want timestamps, locations, and badge numbers. The analyst nodded. Back near gate 42B, Max still hadn't moved. His body was turned now, partially blocking Marcus from foot traffic. Travelers stared with a mix of curiosity and unease, but no one interfered. Officer Jensen finally crouched beside her partner and placed a hand gently on his flank. Talk to me, boy, what is it? Max gave a low huff, eyes never leaving Marcus. He wasn't reacting like he had found drugs or sense. It was more intimate than that, like recognition. Jensen looked up at Marcus. Have you worked with dogs before? Marcus nodded slowly. I served Army Search and Rescue, K-Nahar 2010. Trained with K9 units on site. Dogs were usually shepherds just like him. Her eyes widened. That might explain the familiarity. But this is more than that. He's bonded. That doesn't happen instantly. Behind them, another officer returned with a tablet in hand. Sir, he addressed Harris, who had rejoined the group. Flight logs show Mr. Taylor cleared all scans and database flags until 10 minutes before boarding. To fine until. There's a digital marker added under his TSA pre-check ID that wasn't there earlier in the day. It flags him as enhanced risk screening required. But the origin tag on the marker is weird how it's routed through an inactive administrative account. Last used 6 months ago, it shouldn't even exist. Harris's jaw tightened. So someone ghosted an ID into the system, added a flag and blocked him from boarding? The officer nodded. Yes, sir. Harris turned slowly back to Marcus. Mr. Taylor, I believe there may be an error that goes far beyond your boarding pass. Marcus raised an eyebrow. So what now? Now, Harris replied. We figure out why someone doesn't want you on that flight. A pause passed between them before another voice chimed in. Female, firm, and slightly out of breath. Director Harris? A woman in civilian clothing, clipboard in hand, joined the group. I'm with internal auditing. You need to know boarding gate 42B's access logs don't match flight manifests. There's one extra boarding scan registered after Mr. Taylor was stopped. No visual ID to match it. Harris turned sharply. You're saying someone else got through in his place? That's exactly what I'm saying. And the security footage? Missing. Same time-stamped gap. A silence settled over the group, the noise of the terminal suddenly feeling distant. Jensen placed a hand over Max's collar, but the dog remained fixed in place, ears shifting, tail tapping slowly against the tile in a measured rhythm. Harris turned to Marcus again, his voice quieter now. What were you carrying? Clothes. A gift for my sister's newborn. Some documents. Nothing unusual. Did you check a bag? No. Just carry on. Can we search it? Of course. He handed it over. As security opened the slim black carry-on, they found what Marcus said. Baby clothes wrapped in tissue, a soft blue blanket, a half-read novel, and a leather folder with work documents, mostly invoices and design sketches. Nothing illegal, nothing alarming. But Harris's instincts were rattled. Run the bag for trace, and get a bomb detection scan. Not because I think he has something, but because I want to see if anyone else touched it after he went through initial screening. One of the agents nodded and whisked it away. Then Max moved. Not away, closer. He stepped forward again, pressed his nose against Marcus's calf, then sat again hard. Jensen whispered, he's marking him. Harris stared. Marking him for what? Not threat, she said. Presence, familiarity. It's something we train them to signal when they recognize someone as part of their team. But Max has never met him before, not officially. Marcus finally broke the quiet. I trained 3 K9 units back in 2011. One of the pups never made it through the full program. Injured during the IED course. We lost track of him after that. Harris blinked. And his name? Marcus met his eyes. Max. Marcus stood silent. The name Max still hanging in the air like a dropped pin in a crowded room. Officer Jensen knelt beside the dog, her fingers curling around the leash, her other hand resting gently against the shepherd's shoulder. Max, heel, she said again, not expecting movement. And she didn't get it. The dog remained beside Marcus, breathing steady, alert but calm, the weight of familiarity pressing on the moment. Harris turned toward the security analyst who had returned from the operations center, his expression grim, tablet clutched against his chest. Sir, the analyst said, we found something else. There's an email. Harris motioned for him to continue. The analyst tapped his screen and rotated the tablet to show them an internal memo was sent to the passenger vetting team this morning, time-stamped 6:04 a.m. It contained a list of special monitoring profiles compiled by the Joint Threat Integration Unit, JTIU, but one of the recipient tags routed incorrectly. That system doesn't read full context. It just pulls names and identifiers into the watchlist light filter. Harris leaned closer. Was Mr. Taylor's name on that list? Yes, sir, but not as a suspect. He's referenced as a trainer involved in a 2011 overseas K9 mission, flagged under a note reading sought for follow-up related to inactive K9 serial 847 K9 and IOBH, something about the dog exhibiting unexpected attachment behaviors during a handler reassignment. The name Max appears once, then the trail goes cold. But the list got read by the wrong script. Harris exhaled slowly. So an old memo gets routed wrong, his name ends up red-egged, and our system blindly marks him as enhanced risk. Yes. And not just that. The trigger script is programmed to overwrite access permissions in real time. So it likely updated Mr. Taylor's boarding clearance during check-in, not before. That's why no one saw it until the moment he scanned his path. Brilliant, Harris muttered. Weaponized bureaucracy, the analyst added. It's worse than that. He tapped again. There's another name on the list. Same first initial, same last name, white male, born 1984, versus Taylor's 1985. That one wasn't flagged. Harris straightened. Where is he? The analyst checked. Boarded Flight 88 to Atlanta. Seat 22F. He got through with no inspection. Harris turned toward the field officer by the gate. Pull passenger records for 22F. I want eyes on him before that plane leaves airspace. The officer nodded and broke into a jog toward the tower office. Meanwhile, Marcus leaned in. So, you're telling me I got blocked because someone clicked the wrong inbox? Not exactly, Harris said. The system's built for efficiency, not intelligence. It sees a name, a keyword, and executes a protocol. The deeper problem is someone sent an outdated internal list through an unverified channel. That shouldn't be possible. And yet, here we are. Harris turned to the analyst. Trace the origin of that email. I want headers, IP logs, everything. The analyst nodded. Already working on it. And the other passenger? Harris asked. We don't have a visual on him yet, the analyst replied. The manifest says Charles T. Layton, age 39, boarded with no checked bags, carrying a black Samsonite roller. No secondary screening. His background is clean on paper. Harris narrowed his eyes. Clean is relative. I want Layton's boarding footage from every camera on the concourse. Let's see who waved him through. Back in the terminal, Marcus glanced down at Max, who had finally shifted his position. Still seated, but leaning against Marcus's leg now, in a way that made it hard to ignore the uncanny sense of ownership. Officer Jensen noticed too. That's not just recognition, she murmured. That's defense mode. Harris returned, his voice low. I need to ask you something personal. Back in 2011, did anything irregular happen with that K9 unit? Marcus hesitated. The base was understaffed. Dogs were rotated faster than they should have been. One of them, Max maybe, refused to reassign. There were notes about attachment stress, but it wasn't a priority. Then, during a convoy extraction, we hit an IED. Max pulled one of the rookies out of the blast radius. Took some shrapnel. The army ruled him too damaged for redeployment. I thought he was retired. Harris asked quietly. And now you think that dog is this dog? Marcus nodded once. I didn't know it until he licked my hand. The analyst returned with an update. We have a problem. The email came from a device registered to Agent Aaron Whitlow. Harris's brow darkened. That name's not familiar. It shouldn't be. Whitlow retired 2 years ago. He's not even supposed to have access credentials, but someone activated his badge for a remote login at 3:47 a.m. today. From a private network in Queens. That's a federal violation, Harris said. Get Cyber Division on it. And notify the Department of Internal Security. We may have a ghost login network operating inside TSA clearance channels. Already pinged, the analyst confirmed. But there's more. Layton, the other guy, his ID was updated yesterday right before he bought the ticket. It replaced his residential address with a P.O. box in Delaware. That's a red flag we missed. Harris paced for a second, then stopped. Has the plane taken off? 30 minutes ago. Mid-air now. Damn it. Jensen looked at Marcus. So he took your seat with a similar name and walked right past all this. Marcus said nothing. He just stared through the terminal window. Eyes narrowed. Mind already working the math. He wasn't just avoiding scrutiny, he murmured. He needed my seat. My name. My timing. Harris caught that. You think it was intentional? What's the chance of someone with a similar profile getting through at the exact moment? I'm flagged out because of a bureaucratic glitch. Slim, Harris admitted. Very slim. Then we have to ask, Marcus said, turning to face him fully. Who benefits from that coincidence? The analyst's phone buzzed. He looked down, then up sharply. Sir, facial recognition tagged Layton mid-boarding. The image is clean, but we ran a forensic overlay and it's a 76% match to a flagged identity from a 2018 narcotics investigation. DEA never got the name, he was using an alias, but get this. Same man was seen entering a cargo zone 2 nights ago at a private airport in New Jersey. No record of... Oh, he's smuggling, Harris concluded. Or worse, the analyst added. Posing. Using temporary IDs. Rotating through identities linked to compromised datasets. The moment Taylor got flagged, it created a path for someone else. Jensen blinked. Like a ghost passed, Harris turned to Marcus. You may have just intercepted something way beyond your flight. We need to know if you've been followed, monitored, anything unusual in the last 48 hours. Marcus hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yeah, now that you mention it, there was a man at the baggage carousel when I landed yesterday. I didn't think much of it at the time. Did he approach you? No, but he had a phone. The kind with no branding, like burner phones. Harris turned back to the analyst. Pulse surveillance from yesterday, carousel 3, 2:00 p.m. onwards. Every frame. The analyst nodded and left. Max suddenly stood up. His ears perked. Jensen reached for the leash, but the dog began to move, slowly, deliberately, toward the far side of the terminal. Gaze locked on something no one else had noticed yet. Max moved like a compass needle, drawn by something just outside the field of human awareness. His paws tapped softly against the polished floor. Each step deliberate, nose low, tail horizontal, body tense but not alarmed. Officer Jensen followed a few steps behind, hand firm on the leash but allowing enough slack for the dog to lead. Marcus stayed close, his instincts, years of them, whispering that Max wasn't tracking a threat in the usual sense. He was following a scent, yes, but not for drugs or explosives. He was following memory. They rounded the far curve of Terminal C, past Gate 44, where the crowd thinned. A few passengers waited quietly near the windows, sipping coffee, scrolling phones, unaware of the strange procession moving past them. Max stopped at a corner, where an auxiliary hallway met the main concourse, a quiet zone used mostly by staff. He sniffed the air, then looked back at Marcus with the kind of stare that once only made sense on war zones and broken ground. That look said, "This is where it begins." Before anyone could move, a figure stepped out of the side hall, older, dark-skinned, uniform crisp but lived in, cap tucked under his arm. He looked like any other senior airport security officer, except he wasn't watching the crowd. He was watching Marcus, not just him. Dogs like him, military. Marcus's throat tightened. "Who are you?" "Riddell. K9 Division, 22 years. I've worked with every dog that comes through this airport in the last decade. That one," he gestured to Max, "doesn't respond like a civilian dog. He just marked you as kin." Riddell nodded. "A dog doesn't greet strangers. He doesn't lick hands. He doesn't shadow a person unless he's remembering scent conditioning. That kind of behavior, that's handler imprint. But it's deeper than obedience. It's identity." Marcus met his gaze, something flickering in his eyes. "He used to be mine. Afghanistan 2011, I thought he was retired." Rodell's face shifted slightly. "A few of them weren't. Some got transferred into homeland units after being cleared as too unstable for further combat. And they didn't tell us," Marcus said flatly. "No, they didn't." Rodell checked his surroundings, then leaned in. "I shouldn't say this here, but listen, our dogs, they're trained to key in on certain chemical cues. One of those cues is stress, cortisol release. But there's a second trigger they almost never use unless it's in combat training. It's called deep memory pairing. We embed a handler's scent through months of conditioning. If the dog ever smells that again, it flags home. Loyalty, survival, most dogs forget it. But a few." Marcus swallowed hard. "And Max never let go," Rodell confirmed. "He was supposed to be decommissioned, but somehow he was pushed through the reallocation system. He ended up here 2 years ago." Marcus frowned. "But that doesn't make sense. Why me? Why now?" Rodell glanced down the hallway. "Because someone wanted your name buried." At that moment, Harris appeared, walking briskly toward them, flanked by the analyst from earlier, now holding a folder rather than a tablet. "We pulled military records," Harris began. "But there's a problem." Marcus tilted his head. "What kind of problem?" The analyst handed him the folder. Inside was a printout of Marcus's military service timeline. It stopped abruptly in late 2010. No mention of his tour in Afghanistan, no K9 unit, no deployment under Operation Iron Valley. Just a sterile note. Honorably discharged November 2010. No further service. Marcus stared at the page. "That's not right," Harris replied. "We thought so too. So we cross-checked with Department of Defense archives, NATO logs, and field service reports." "And?" Marcus asked. "The analyst has no record of your K9 training, no record of your deployment. You're listed as active reserve with no field time logged after basic. Jensen's eyes widened. But that's impossible. He knows everything. He moves like a trained responder. You don't fake that. Harris nodded grimly. We agree. But your official record, it's been scrubbed? Marcus's jaw clenched. Someone erased me. That's one way to put it, Harris said. Rodell stepped forward again. What about the dogs, he asked. What happened to the other ones in his unit? The analyst flipped a few pages. Out of the 5 K9s assigned to Operation Iron Valley, 3 were reported dead in action. 1 went missing from a transport convoy en route to a NATO base in Germany. Marcus exhaled. Max was the only one who pulled through after the IED. The rest didn't make it. I spent months in recovery, and when I asked about Max, they told me he was euthanized. Rodell looked down at the dog, who now lay curled at Marcus's feet like a sentinel. Somebody lied. Harris paced a few steps, trying to piece together the pattern. So, someone wanted you scrubbed. Then they tried to keep Max alive but off record. Now both of you resurface in the same terminal on the same day, and a man with your name boards a plane under a near-identical profile. The analyst added, and that man is tied to burner identities used in DEA investigations. Rodell looked up sharply. You weren't just stealing a name, they were borrowing his ghost. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Ghost? When someone's record is clean but quiet, and no one's looking for them, it's perfect cover. You walk in under that name, use their timeline, act like the version of them that no longer exists. Most systems won't flag you because there's nothing to check against. It's camouflage built on silence. I'm not silent anymore, Marcus muttered. Harris nodded. Exactly. And that's the problem, for whoever's running this. The analyst's phone buzzed again. He checked, then looked up with urgency. Sir, we have a partial match. Remember the man Marcus mentioned? The one watching him at the baggage carousel. We ran facial recognition from yesterday. He appears again, this time outside the airport 2 hours before Leighton's boarding. But there's something else. Ilser appears in a satellite feed from Kandahar. Circa 2011. Same frame as Marcus, he was embedded with NATO Logistics, civilian contractor. No name, no file, but the facial markers are 94% consistent. Marcus went still. I know him, not by name, we called him Coach. He was always around the hangars, never spoke much. Took pictures, watched training drills. Thought he was... Max stood again. This time he was facing the hallway behind them, tail straight, nose flaring. Rodell followed the dog's line of sight and stiffened. That corridor goes to the underground logistics tunnels. Staff adds access, but if someone slipped past, it's the fastest way to baggage, to security, to outbound loading zones. Marcus didn't hesitate. He stepped toward the tunnel, Max flanking him like he never left. Harris called after him. Marcus, wait, we don't know who's down there. Marcus didn't turn. Neither does Max. But he's already tracking him. Marcus moved into the service tunnel with purpose, his steps echoing slightly against the concrete floor as Max stayed at his side. Tail rigid, breathing steady, ears locked forward. The air smelled of old jet fuel and bleach, a mixture Marcus hadn't encountered in years, yet felt disturbingly familiar. Behind them, Officer Jensen followed at a calculated distance. Weapon holstered but hand hovered near it, while Harris instructed the team through his comms to lock down side access points. Lights overhead buzzed in intervals, flickering at times as if the entire hallway were reluctantly revealing its truths. Max suddenly paused, nose twitching, then veered left toward a low metal door labeled Staff Only, Cargo Access. Marcus stopped and waited as Jensen stepped forward to swipe the access badge. The door clicked open, revealing a narrow staircase that led down into the deeper guts of the airport. They descended. At the same time, back in the main terminal, a young woman in a denim jacket and pink earbuds was sitting cross-legged by the window near Gate 42B, idly editing a TikTok video she'd shot earlier while waiting for her delayed flight to Denver. The clip was shaky, filmed over the shoulder of her seatmate, but it captured the moment perfectly. A black man being pulled from the boarding line, escorted away without explanation, followed minutes later by a police dog that refused to leave his side. Overlaid text read, "This man got pulled for nothing." Then the canine straight up licked his hand, and she had 3,000 followers. Not enough for her to expect much, but within 10 minutes, comments started flooding in. Then shares, Within the hour, it was on Twitter, Reddit, Instagram Reels. By the time the clip crossed 500,000 views, it had already caught the attention of 2 major activist accounts and 1 investigative journalist with a reputation for uncovering law enforcement misconduct. Her phone buzzed non-stop as replies poured in, some demanding accountability, some offering legal contacts, others asking for the man's name, for context, for the full story. But no one knew his name. He'd simply disappeared down a hallway with a dog that wouldn't leave him. Meanwhile, Harris received a call from Airport Legal. He stepped aside, finger pressed to his earpiece, listening silently before responding. "Are you sure that name?" A pause. "No. Don't send it to email. Bring it to me directly." He turned to Jensen, who had returned from the stairwell to update the rest of the unit. Someone just submitted a formal complaint through the Port Authority's external channel. It references the incident with Taylor, and it triggered a keyword match in the legal archive. Jensen frowned. "What kind of keyword?" Harris didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked back to the security office, where an older man in a suit, graying at the temples and with a badge reading Chief Supervisor Conrad Weller, sat stiffly, arms folded across his chest. "Weller," Harris began carefully, "there's a video. It's going viral." Weller looked unimpressed. "Passengers record things all the time. Most of it doesn't mean a damn thing." "This might," Harris replied. "You were in charge of shift logs this morning. That's correct? Then you authorized the boarding override for passenger Layton." "I don't recall doing that." Harris arched an eyebrow. "We have logs." Weller shrugged. "Then check them." "You did. That's not the issue. The issue is that your override coincided with the moment Taylor was flagged, and no backup protocol was initiated. You bypassed both secondary screening and biometric check. That violates policy." Weller leaned back, jaw tight. "You trying to suggest something?" "I'm trying to understand," Harris said calmly, "why your name also appears in a sealed case file from 2016. Complaint number A417 to alleged profiling and denial of boarding at LaGuardia. Plaintiff's name was Shauna Bell." For the first time, Weller's face stiffened. "That case was dropped." "Correct," Harris nodded. "But it wasn't dismissed. The complainant settled out of court. The internal review was inconclusive and the disciplinary record was scrubbed." "Scrubbed legally," Weller snapped. "Expunged." "I was cleared." "You were cleared on paper," Harris said. "But we just found an internal memo indicating a recommendation for suspension that never got executed. Instead, your file was flagged as sensitive and locked under administrative code." Weller stood. "You better watch where you're going with this." Harris didn't flinch. "Third, I've got a K-9 identifying a man whose records don't exist. A misrouted government email that marked him as a threat. A look-alike passenger who bypassed security, and now a shift lead with a history of unexplained clearance overrides." "You think I did something racist?" Weller growled. "I think someone used your authority to do something very convenient," Harris answered. "And whether that was you or someone behind your login depends on how much you cooperate." Weller's eyes narrowed. "I want legal present before I say another word." Harris nodded slowly. "That's fine, but we're seizing your access credentials, effective immediately." In the cargo tunnels, Marcus and Max emerged into a loading bay lined with pallets and sealed cargo crates. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, throwing long shadows against the floor. There was no sound but the distant hum of machinery and the echo of Jensen's boots behind them. Max stopped near a stack of boxes labeled medical equipment, nose pressing toward one in particular. Marcus moved closer. The box looked undisturbed, but something about the labeling struck him. It was a standard shipping stencil, but the print was smudged in one corner, slightly blurred, as if redone in haste. He reached out and tapped it. The sound was too hollow. Jensen came up beside him, drew her sidearm and covered him as he carefully pried the lid open. Inside, beneath a shallow layer of packing foam, were what looked like standard supplies. Gloves, vials, sealed syringes. But deeper inside, a hard case, matte black with no markings. Marcus lifted it slowly and set it down, opening the latches with practiced hands. When the lid clicked free, he stared down at the contents in stunned silence. Inside the case was a high-frequency signal jammer, a stack of RFID clone chips, and an encrypted satellite uplink router. devices used to block, mimic, and reroute digital identity systems in real time. Jensen stared. That's not medical equipment. No, Marcus muttered. It's battlefield tech, black market grade, used for identity masking in high-security zones. I saw stuff like this used by embedded operatives who didn't want to exist on paper. You think Layton used this to hijack your boarding profile? No, Marcus said slowly. I think someone gave him the tools and my identity was just the key they needed to walk in. Above them, Harris received another alert, this time from the cybersecurity team. Sir, the voice said, we cracked the metadata on the flag email. It was sent from an obfuscated relay, but the origin point routes back to a device registered to a shell company called Resolux Solutions. Harris froze. Resolux. That name's familiar. It should be, the voice replied, we're a private contractor in Kabul. Did logistical work for the Army between 2009 and 2012. But they also handled off-record IT projects. And get this, they folded in 2013. But their asset registry shows a 2011 contract assigned to an analyst named Charles Layton. Jensen's radio crackled. Control to Jensen, priority alert. Viral video footage of the boarding incident has prompted congressional interest. DHS is requesting a briefing in 30 minutes. CNN and ProPublica are already making inquiries. Be advised, this is not contained. Marcus glanced up at her. So now everyone, she said. But the right ones are starting to look. Max let out a low, single bark. He was staring into the shadows of the bay again, body tense. Marcus followed his gaze and saw the edge of a boot slip behind a crate. The sound of the boot sliding behind the crate was faint, but Max heard it first. The dog tensed, body low, hackles slightly raised, tail stiff. Marcus instinctively moved between Max and the shadowed aisle, while Jensen dropped into a crouch, weapons drawn. Come out slowly, she commanded, her voice silence. Then a figure emerged. A man, a paper. Don't shoot, he said quickly. I work maintenance. Badge, Jensen ordered. The man hesitated, then reached slowly into his vest and produced a lanyard with an airport-issued ID. She stepped forward, snatched it, scanned it, then frowned. This badge was deactivated 3 weeks ago. I didn't know, the man said. I was just told to check the crates. Told by who? Marcus asked. Somebody from upstairs. Logistics? Name? I don't know, I just get a call and show up. Jensen wasn't buying it. You accessed a restricted cargo zone with a dead badge, found tampered shipping crates and didn't report it? The man shrugged. Look, I'm just trying to keep my job. Marcus studied the man closely. There was something off, the body language too defensive, the story too practiced. But before he could press further, Jensen's radio crackled again. All units, be advised, press is arriving on site. Viral footage has triggered a wave of media activity. They're demanding access and comment from airport officials. Jensen's glanced at Marcus. Looks like your moment's gone. Above them, chaos was unfolding in real time. Outside Terminal C, a row of satellite vans had formed within 30 minutes of the video hitting national news. Microphones, boom arms, rolling cameras, all pointed toward the glass walls of the departure lounge where the incident first unfolded. In the middle of this media storm stood a woman in her mid-30s, shoulder-length brown hair pulled into a loose bun. Her phone buzzed with the 4th interview request in 20 minutes, but she ignored it. Instead, she stared at the paused frame on her screen, a grainy still from the viral TikTok, showing Marcus mid-conversation with security. Max at his side, body coiled in alertness. Her breath caught. She zoomed in. Though older, more weathered, there was no mistaking the shape of his face, the posture of his frame. She knew that man. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tapped open her encrypted contact archive. In 2011, she had been embedded with NATO press in a village near Kandahar. Her convoy was hit by an IED. She had been trapped beneath twisted steel and burning fabric, lungs full of smoke, one leg pinned. The only face she remembered seeing clearly as she lost consciousness was that of a soldier pulling her free, arms cut, uniform blackened, but his voice calm and firm. You're okay, I've got you. His name, she would later learn from a field nurse, was Marcus Taylor. For years, she had wondered what happened to him. She'd tried to find him, searching military records, checking photo logs, even sending messages to vet networks, but nothing came up. It was like he vanished, and now there he was, on TikTok, being removed from a flight for no apparent reason, next to a canine dog that looked too trained to be coincidence. She turned to her assistant. "Get me a secure line and find me the name of the head of airport security at JFK." Her assistant blinked. "Why?" "Because I used to date him." "You what?" "He has the reason I stopped covering domestic politics and went to war zones," she said dryly. "Now he's going to explain why the man who saved my life is being treated like a threat." The secure call went through in seconds. A gruff voice answered. "Director King." "Hey, Caleb, it's Kate." A pause. "Kate," she says, "it's been what, 7 years?" "8, she replied, "and I need to talk to you about someone named Marcus Taylor." Silence. Then, "How do you know that name?" "He's on your watch list," she said evenly. "He was detained today under false suspicion. Your systems flagged him, your people pulled him, and your internal clearance logs are being torn apart right now by every major agency in this country. So before this gets worse, you're going to tell me what the hell is going on." "Kate, it's not that simple." "It never is," she interrupted. "But this time, I'm not just reporting it. I'm in it. He saved my life, Caleb, and I'm not going to let you bury him." At that moment, inside the logistics bay, Harris received a call. He listened for 10 seconds, then muttered, "Understood?" He turned to Marcus. "We just got a call from DHS Media Relations. Someone high up is pushing this into a special investigation tier. Apparently, a journalist with Pentagon clearance recognized you." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Recognized me?" "Name's Catherine James," Harris said. "She's the one who sent footage of a previous deployment to confirm you were listed incorrectly in the DODOD archives. That proof is now circulating on a secure interagency thread. Your case just became a flashpoint." Jensen frowned. "Who is she?" Marcus replied quietly. "A journalist. I pulled her from a wreck in Kandahar. She was barely breathing." Harris nodded slowly. "Well, she's breathing fire now, and she just forced the chief of airport security into a closed-door meeting with internal affairs." Above them, King was pacing in his private office, phone still to his ear. "Kate, you know I don't have jurisdiction over live investigations. The TSA flagged him because your people let an unauthorized boarding pass override through unchecked. I have proof, and if you don't cooperate, I'll publish it." "Don't threaten me," King growled. "I'm not," she said. "I'm giving you the chance to do the right thing before the world sees how your airport runs its system." "He's not in danger," King said. "No," she replied. "He's in history, and you're just now figuring that out." Back on the cargo floor, Max suddenly turned sharply left, his ears swiveling toward an echoing metallic clang. Jensen raised her weapon again, and Marcus instinctively stepped to the side of the crate. The maintenance man from earlier had vanished. The corridor he'd come from now lay empty. Harris narrowed his eyes. "We've been talking too long. Someone's moving while we're distracted." Jensen tapped her radio. "Dispatch, I need a sweep of subzone B3. Possible breach from unauthorized personnel. Also, alert handlers. Max has detected movement." "Copy," came the response. Marcus looked at Harris. "This is all happening too fast." Harris nodded grimly. "Because someone planned it that way. While the media watches one story, the real one's moving in the dark." Max clenched his jaw. Not for long, Max is already one step ahead. The echo of Max's bark still rang through the metal passage when backup arrived. 2 officers in tactical gear jogging down the corridor toward the last direction the unknown maintenance man had taken. Jensen signaled them to sweep the northern loading zone, while Harris quickly tapped into the portable surveillance hub wheeled in minutes earlier. A junior analyst connected the field laptop to the secure airport network and began pulling the secondary feeds, the ones stored redundantly in back-end cloud servers, less likely to be edited or compromised. "I'm accessing footage from the South Wing's rear corridor cameras," the analyst explained. Fingers leaned in. "I want time-stamped footage for the window starting 15 minutes before Taylor was flagged until 10 after Layton boarded." The analyst nodded and waited as the encrypted archives decrypted frame by frame. Then she frowned. "Found it. Sir, you need to see this." The screen showed Marcus approaching the boarding line. Calm, orderly, carry-on in hand, posture relaxed, standing alone. The camera's angle from the rear hull caught what the main boarding camera missed. A white male with matching height and build lingering against the far wall, just beyond the crowd's edge, head lowered, hat pulled down. The man watched the line carefully, pulled a phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, then turned and disappeared down the staff corridor. Precisely at the moment Marcus was called forward, another window loaded. This one showed the same man, Leighton, walking casually into the restricted staff hallway, pausing briefly near a janitor's cart, where he pulled on a reflective vest and flashed something to a distracted guard. No luggage, no clearance scan, yet within 90 seconds he re-emerged inside the jetway entry zone, now carrying Marcus's boarding profile displayed on the terminal scanner. He nodded to the flight attendant, walked aboard without a second glance, and vanished into the aircraft's body. Harris's knuckles tightened. There's your breach. Full impersonation. Clean handoff, forged profile, timed distraction. Jensen stared. He swapped out Marcus at the gate and used the internal passage to smuggle Leighton aboard. The analyst added, and the moment Marcus was denied entry, the system locked out his ID and archived the overwrite, making it look like a security flag had stopped him for cause. Marcus exhaled slowly, jaw clenched. They built the whole thing to happen in less than 2 minutes. The delay, the dog, the override, all synchronized. Harris turned to the analyst. Save that footage, encrypt and send to DHS oversight now. The analyst nodded. But it wasn't over. A call came through from the Canine Inspection Unit, stationed at the private terminal connected to the international wing. The voice on the line was tense. Sir, this is Handler Ruiz. We've located the black Samsonite roller connected to passenger Charles Leighton. It was tagged by mistake to diplomatic clearance and stored in outbound luggage without standard canine sweep. You've got it in custody now? Harris asked. Yes, and we ran Max on it, along with 2 other dogs. When Max sniffed the seam of the case, he let out a warning shriek. Not a bark, not a passive alert. A full throat whine. It only happens when the dogs smell nitrate compounds at close concentration. I've only seen it twice. Once in training, once in Helmand. Open it, Harris said. Already did. Ruiz responded. Found a false lining under the main compartment. Inside was a sealed pouch with moisture regulators and chemical wraps. Preliminary field test is positive for RDX, military-grade explosive. The room went still. Jensen looked at Marcus. They used your profile to smuggle explosives aboard a commercial aircraft. Harris turned to the analyst. Confirm whether Leighton boarded with that bag. Cross-reference camera feeds, she said. Give me 30 seconds. Tension spiked in the room like a wire-pulled taut. Then the analyst gasped. Sir, said it was a lost item from a delayed connecting flight. The crew member walked it into the cargo hold. Harris's stomach sank. Get that plane grounded right now. Already done, Jensen confirmed. They rerouted to Dulles under pretense of mechanical check. Passengers are being held on tarmac. The bag's been removed and secured. Harris turned to Marcus. This isn't just identity fraud anymore. This is a coordinated infiltration. Someone used your name, your erased records, your vanished canine history to move military explosives past every level of screening. And the only reason it failed was Max before any of us. He smelled something we'd forgotten how to see. Harris gave a long breath. We're going to need to reinterregulate everyone who touched that flight manifest. And I want full records from the personnel assignment office. No more half-truths. We trace every login, every override, every clearance badge issued in the last 48 hours. And what about Leighton? Jensen asked. He's in the wind, Harris admitted. But now we know what he was carrying and who he framed, and we've got his face on 100 feeds. He won't stay hidden. Back on the surface, the media pressure had doubled. Catherine James stood before a forest of microphones, surrounded by press and a handful of legal observers, holding up a single still image. Marcus with Max beside him, a moment before being escorted from the boarding line. This man, she said calmly, was marked as a threat because of a system error compounded by human indifference. But the real threat wasn't him. It was the man who used his name to hide a weapon, and the only one who knew the truth from the start was a dog. At that very moment, Rodell, the old canine officer, stepped into the command room, where Harris stood reviewing the footage loop again. We trained those dogs to follow their instincts when ours fail, he said quietly. Max never forgot him that saved lives today. Paris nodded, silent, before turning to Marcus. You ready to go public with this? Marcus hesitated. If I do, I want full transparency. No filtered story, no press lines. The truth, no matter how inconvenient. Deal, Paris said. But first, we have one more place to check. If Leighton didn't carry that bag himself, then someone else is still on the inside. Max growled softly, just once, as a new signal popped on the terminal scanner. The signal that appeared on the terminal scanner wasn't random. It was an alert triggered by a badge swipe from a zone long thought inactive. The old courier ramp beneath the secondary service lift at Terminal D. An area decommissioned months ago for renovation. Paris leaned forward as the alert pinged red on the surveillance interface. Run that access point, he ordered sharply. Find out who just used it, the analyst typed fast. Badge reads as Level 3 Logistics, name attached is Bryce Keller. But sir, that badge was flagged in 2022 after Keller was terminated for bypassing customs protocols at Miami International. So how the hell did it just scan live? Jensen nodded and looked at Marcus. You good? I've got the one partner I trust most, he replied, glancing at Max, who stood already facing the exit, tail low and tense. They moved quickly, winding through the sterile white corridors, past the logistics office where Rodell joined them, slipping back into his old rhythm as if the years had peeled away. They descended through a maintenance stairwell into the underbelly of the airport, where damp concrete and copper piping traced the ceilings like exposed veins. The courier ramp appeared ahead, quiet, lights dimmed, the metal door at the end slightly ajar. Max stopped 2 feet from it, nose lifted, body completely still. Marcus knelt beside him. What is it? Max sniffed once more, then emitted a low growl, short and sharp. Not fear, recognition. Marcus's brow furrowed. He knows that scent. Jensen raised her weapon, stepped to the side of the frame, and nudged the door open with her foot. What they saw inside halted them cold. The room beyond had once been a storage area, now repurposed into a makeshift lab. Stacked against the walls were black duffel bags filled with compact electronics, hard drives stripped of labels, military-grade jammers, tiny transceivers, encrypted routers. On the table in the center lay 3 unmarked cases. One had its lid open, revealing rows of custom-built RFID injectors, tools used to embed false identities into airport systems via network tap. Marcus stepped closer, eyes narrowing. This isn't just about explosives. This is infrastructure sabotage. Jensen checked the screen in the corner, showing real-time logs of what had been scanned from outgoing flights. They've been piggybacking digital signals onto the main cargo net, she said. Every time a flight goes out, their devices ride the data. What's the endgame? Marcus asked. Rodell and control. Interference. They could redirect packages, monitor shipments, even trigger false alarms. Make people chase ghosts while the real payload moves somewhere else. Max suddenly growled again, louder this time, and back toward the hall. Footsteps echoed down the tunnel, the same sound Marcus remembered hearing before. Then a shadow rounded the corner and a man stepped into view. He looked almost unremarkable, late 40s, clean-shaven, maintenance jacket, gloves. But there was something in his eyes, vacant yet calculating. He paused when he saw them, and Marcus recognized him in Leighton, he said, but the man didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. That's one of the names I used, yeah. But let's not pretend you really knew me. You were just the template. Marcus clenched his fists. Template. The man stepped into the light. You had the perfect profile, military but scrubbed, airport training but no oversight. You were the hole in the net. And that dog, he nodded toward Max. Max snarled, and Marcus instinctively grabbed the leash, holding him steady. You used my name to carry explosives. Now you're pushing tech? The man tilted his head. Explosives were a distraction. The real cargo's still outbound. But that smell your dog's picking up on? He tapped his temple. It's from a component we used in Helmand. Took months to perfect. Left a residue even military-grade cleaners can't erase. But your dog? He remembers it. Jensen raised her weapon. You're coming with us. I don't think so, he said, and threw a small object onto the ground. It burst with a high-pitched tone, disorienting everyone for half a second. By the time Marcus blinked the noise away, the man was gone. the hallway echoing with retreating footsteps. Max lunged forward, pulling the leash. Marcus ran after him, Jensen and Rodell close behind. They chased the shadow through 2 maintenance tunnels and up a stairwell until they reached a secure baggage lift. The doors were closing, but Max pushed forward, nose between the gaps, whining. Marcus hit the override button. Blocked, Jensen said. He's trying to escape via ground transport. Rodell grabbed his radio. Regi units to checkpoint 8. We got a suspect heading for outbound service gate. The dispatch answered immediately. Roger. Intercept team en route. Marcus turned to the others. He said Max remembered the smell. From Helmand? Rodell nodded. Makes sense. You trained Max on explosive residue in that zone. He was exposed to every device type used by black market dealers, especially the signal boosters embedded in dirty kits. He doesn't forget. In the control room above, Harris was reviewing manifests. Sir, one of the analysts called out, we found a match to one of the serial numbers in the equipment downstairs. It links to a shipment declared as replacement navigational parts, but the contents matched contraband flagged by the Department of Energy last year. Destination? Harris asked. Unlisted. The parcel was routed through 5 dummy addresses ending with a diplomatic cargo tag from a non-disclosure agreement country. That's how they hid it, Harris said. They wrapped sabotage inside diplomacy. As teams closed in on the outer gate, Catherine James was reporting live from just outside the building, streaming to over 2 million viewers. We now know the man denied boarding was innocent. We now know the real threat was disguised behind credentials, behind a system failure, and a dog's memory became the only uncompromised record. His name is Max, and this story isn't just about security. It's about who's allowed to be forgotten and who refuses to forget. Marcus tightened his grip on Max's leash, eyes set on the narrowing corridor ahead, heart pounding with the sense that the deeper they went, the more buried truths were beginning to surface. The sun had already begun to fall when Marcus stood outside the Federal Canine Tactical Center, the silhouette of Max by his side forming a perfect shadow against the concrete steps. 2 days had passed since the cargo raid, and though the suspect had escaped, the trail he left behind ignited a federal investigation that swept across multiple agencies and unraveled a network so entrenched it took an entire task force to categorize the layers of manipulation. But amid that chaos, something else had quietly begun to take shape. A call from the Department of Homeland Security. A request to meet not as a suspect, not as a ghost soldier, but as someone with knowledge that couldn't be replicated because it wasn't stored in servers or files. It was lived. It was muscle memory. It was trust, buried in the bones of a dog who never forgot. When Marcus had entered the meeting room at DHS headquarters in DDC, flanked by Harris and Jensen, the room stood still. The assistant director himself extended a hand. Mr. Taylor, we've been reviewing your unofficial records, and we'd like to ask if you'd consider serving as a senior advisor in rebuilding our national canine training infrastructure. Marcus hadn't answered immediately. His eyes had flicked to Max, who lay calmly by the door, the tension of the last days finally giving way to quiet. Why me? He'd asked. Because there are gaps we didn't know existed, the director replied. Gaps you lived through. You trained dogs in real war, you understand the instincts they developed, and yours trusted you over our systems that saved lives. Marcus had nodded slowly. If I do this, I want it done right, not just new protocols. I want oversight. Inclusion. I want these dogs paired with handlers based on integrity, not politics. You'll write the guidelines, the director had said. Your word will be policy. That was 2 hours ago. Now, as he walked up the steps of the center, he didn't feel victorious. He felt necessary. One of the instructors approached. Mr. Taylor, they're ready when you are. Marcus gave a small nod, then turned to Max. You up for one more demo, old man? Max responded with a low chuff, tail flicking once. They stepped onto the field, and the murmurs began. New trainees whispering as they recognized the man who had been the center of a viral media storm, who had gone from security risk to security reformer in less than 72 hours. But Marcus didn't speak to that. He addressed the room with a voice that carried quiet conviction. You don't train dogs to obey, he said. You train them to decide, to think, and most importantly, to trust. That's what makes them dangerous, and that's what makes them right when everything else is wrong. Later that evening, Rodell met him in the admin office, a thick folder in hand. "Got something you'll want to see." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Another ghost file." "Better," Rodell said. "The file they didn't delete, they just buried it." He placed the folder on the desk and opened it. Inside was a full personnel record, Marcus's, deployment orders, K9 training logs, mission conditions, but stapled to the back was a memo. Subject: reclassification and removal from combat roster. Reason: fitness and command concerns. Command concerns. Authored by Major Brent H. Whitmore. "You remember him? He ran the final review board for handler certification," Marcus said slowly. "He questioned my reaction time after an IED drill, said I was too cautious under fire, and that my instinct was to retreat instead of engage aggressively." Rodell tapped the paper. He also noted, and I quote, "Subject's mannerisms and demeanor reflect an emotional disposition inconsistent with alpha leadership." Marcus felt the heat rise behind his eyes. "He meant I was black. He meant he didn't want you making decisions that white men would have to follow." Rodell pulled out another sheet. "But that's not all. We found his name in the clearance log 2 weeks ago. He authorized the request that scrubbed your identity from the K9 program archive. And guess what? He's still in the system?" "No," Rodell said. "He's in charge of security consultation for Resolus, the same private contractor that handled the rogue gear discovered at JFK." Marcus didn't speak. His silence was heavier than anger. Rodell continued, "But here's the kicker," Max flagged on him. "When they brought him into a briefing as part of a subcontractor audit, Max was nearby. He let out the same low alert bark he gave near that crate of RDX. Max remembered him. He was there in Helmuth," Marcus said quietly. "He was the one who wanted us to field test electronic jammers without safety calibration." Rodell nodded. "And when you objected, he wrote me off, made me disappear. But Max didn't forget. He marked him." Back in the hallway, Jensen and Harris stood outside the room where Whitmore was now being debriefed under oath. Harris leaned in. "They've got enough to open a case. Conflict of interest, suppression of military record, obstruction of security protocol. Add to that the direct link to a smuggled explosive case. He's not walking out clean." Jensen glanced inside. Funny, isn't it? He thought erasing one man would make the system safer. But the system wasn't what saved it. A dog. Harris smiled faintly. A dog and the man he never stopped protecting. Inside, Whitmore shifted nervously in his seat as investigators closed the loop. He looked up once and saw Marcus through the glass. There was no confrontation, no gloating, just a steady stare, one that said, "You tried to erase me, but I became the story you couldn't control." And at that moment, the lights above flickered, not from failure but from a system reset. A manual trigger ordered by DHS to purge the last corrupted files from its internal database. One by one, true records returned to the screen. The morning sun broke clean across the steps of the Capitol Plaza, casting long lines of shadow across the crowd that had begun to gather well before dawn. Rows of folding chairs faced the podium, and behind them, cameras and journalists waited in silent coordination, waiting for the moment the man at the center of the last week's chaos would step forward. Not as a headline, not as a suspect, not even as a symbol, but simply as a man with something to say. Marcus stood behind the black curtain with Max at his side, the old dog sitting tall, his coat brushed and his badge already turned in to K9 Command the night before. The decision had been made swiftly. Max would not be reassigned, would not be placed back into field service. After his final alert and weeks of unwavering loyalty, the department declared his record exceptional and complete, and Marcus, when asked if he would consider taking Max home as part of the standard adoption process, had answered with a tired smile, "He never left." At exactly 9:00 a.m., Marcus stepped up to the microphone. The murmur of the crowd faded into full silence. Catherine James was in the front row, camera crew positioned to broadcast his words live across every major outlet, and behind her sat Harris, Jensen, Rodell, and several handlers from the K9 tactical program, all of them standing now not by protocol but by respect. Marcus cleared his throat, adjusted the mic and began. "Few days ago I was stopped at an airport gate. I was told I was a threat. I was pulled aside, questioned, held. And if it had ended there, maybe the story would have passed quietly like so many others. But it didn't end there, because one dog refused to forget who I was. And because of that, the truth began to surface. Not just about me, but about the way we treat history, memory, and surface. He paused, then looked toward Max, who stood alert near the steps. You've been asked if I want recognition. If I want an apology, a medal, a new title. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here to ask one thing. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, worn at the edges. This is the last mission report I submitted in 2011. In it, I listed a man named Ramon Albright as the canine handler who sacrificed himself to shield civilians during an ambush in Helmut. That report was never processed. Ramon's name was never engraved on the memorial in Fort Benning. He was marked as missing documentation. His dog survived. I trained that dog, the same dog that found me at the gate. Marcus's voice softened. So if this moment means anything, then let it mean we restore what was taken. Put Ramon's name where it belongs. Give his family the flag they never received. Give his memory the weight it earned. There was silence, thick, reverence, stunned. Then, applause began, slow at first, then rising like a wave. The camera caught Marcus lowering his head slightly, stepping back, his request echoing louder than any speech could have. Later that day, back at the small apartment Marcus had lived in since leaving service, Max climbed the 3 flights of stairs without hesitation. The handler had given him one last checkup before release. Minor arthritis, a scar above the right paw, and perfect scent retention. Marcus opened the door, let him in, and dropped the leash. Max padded to the center of the room, sniffed once, then circled the old rug and lay down, exhaling deeply, as if the weight of 1,000 commands had finally lifted. On the table sat a single frame, an old photo of Marcus, Ramon, and 2 dogs in uniform gear. Marcus picked it up, touched the edge, then placed it on the wall where sunlight now struck it directly. The phone rang shortly after. It was Harris. You saw the votes? Yeah, Marcus said. Unanimous. Ramon's name will be added next month. You'll be invited to speak. Not this time, Marcus replied. Let his family speak. It's theirs now. Understood, Harris said. But just so you know, that speech today, it changed something. Let's hope it holds, Marcus said, and hung up. That evening, the air was quiet. Marcus sat on the fire escape with Max curled beside him, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Below them, life went on, people walking home from work, buses groaning through narrow streets, music playing faintly from a window across the alley. But for the first time in years, Marcus didn't feel erased. Philly Defoe was not because of headlines, but because one memory locked in a dog's instinct had refused to let him disappear. He reached down, scratched behind Max's ears. No more orders, partner. No more missions. Just you and me now. Max let out a soft huff, then rested his head on Marcus's boot. And as the stars came out, the world turned one more time, not toward forgetfulness, but toward remembering right. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true-to-life narratives that stay with you long after the last word. What moment hit you the hardest? Do you think Max remembered more than just scent? And where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts.